Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Trustees of Trust Funds meeting of October 29th, 2021. Our first order of business is just introductions. I'm Chris Christensen, Chairman. To my right is,
Tom Boland, Finance Director for the town.
to my left,
Pat Heinrich, trustee of the trust funds.
and in the audience, Liz Petridis. We don't have a microphone for you.
Yeah, Liz Petridis in the audience.
Thank you very much. And quickly, the next order of business is the minutes of September 17th. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes of September 17th.
Pat?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All three in favor. Okay, next order of business is a review of our forest situation. And we have Eric Radloff, our forester, on the phone. He has given us a one-page rundown of some of the background, and that page will be included as an addendum to the minutes when those are posted. Eric, you've got the floor.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you everybody for having me. Calling from the woods, so if you can't hear me, let me know and I'll try to speak a little clear.
Nope, you're good.
Perfect. Good to hear. So, Chris basically asked me to kind of speak on a few talking points, kind of get caught back up. It's been a while. COVID has come and still here, and trying to get back to looking at some forest land. So, everybody's got my notes in front of them, I hope, but if not, I'm just going to run through them real quick, and then at the end, if anybody's got any questions, I'll ask you to hold them till then, and then we can address kind of each of the topics and then dive into any other information that you're curious about. So I'll just start off first. So the last time we all kind of got together, or some of us got together, is back in 2019, back in October, basically a couple years ago, kind of to the day. And we reviewed the Lawrence Road and the Mitchell Street parcels. And basically from our site walk and kind of our conversation, we felt that the forest management plan was still in line with everything that we had observed out there, and basically agreed with the timetables and the timeline kind of laid out for next management plan or possible upcoming timber harvest opportunities. So I do understand that you folks have quite the process of kind of putting together a timber harvest schedule with voting and what have you. So keeping that in mind, I do recommend that we touch base again 2024, 2025 to kind of discuss A, do we need to update the forest management plan, and then B, is this a good time to discuss conducting a timber harvest? So I'm sure there'll be questions about that, but we'll tackle that once I'm done kind of going through the list. So the next thing is going to be that tree farm reinspection. So both properties are considered tree farms, and they're part of the New Hampshire Tree Farm Program, which is a national program. And basically kind of a recognition program for landowners who manage their properties in a sustainable manner, founded on those four major principles: that wood, water, wildlife, and recreation. So those are kind of those overarching goals and objectives for the forest land. And as part of being in that program, every 6 years we have to do what's called a reinspection. And we just completed one of those reinspections, and all it was this time around, since we've visited the site recently, was I just had to fill out the inspection form. I think I had spoke with Chris just about kind of some information, and then I just had to add kind of some missing pieces, because every 5 years or so the standards change. Tree Farm will add some standards and remove some standards, and moving forward, the only thing that I kind of had to do just as part of the reinspection was just an updated natural heritage data check. And I do have that information. I can provide that to Chris, and then he can share that with everybody. So the forest management plan was missing that component, so I was able to just do a quick natural heritage search and then look for threatened and endangered species. And then once I had that information, I was able to finish the tree farm reinspection, so we're good to go for another 6 years. I am what's called a tree farm inspector. I really do like this program because it allows us as tree farm inspectors just to kind of reconnect with landowners every 5-6 years. So a lot of good opportunities to kind of rediscover things and discuss the property. So moving on to the next topic, which is that COVID lumber boom. And I mean, this has been the talk of the town 2020, 2021. We still talk about it, quite common. And long story short, you go to your favorite lumber yard, prices were through the roof, and then if you own any woodland, and say, hey, my timber must be worth incredible money because I'm paying incredible money for lumber. And that just wasn't really the case. When you kind of get down to the nitty gritty, basically, I think, I forget how I worded it here. Yeah, so basically it'd be an incredible discussion on a supply, demand, and markets. So the short answer is no, your trees did not become more valuable overnight. Those high prices you were paying in those retail markets, that money really didn't trickle too far down the chain of custody. The other big thing that we were up against was just reduced contractor capacity during these COVID times. Markets, whether it's a log yard or a mill, wherever these forest products were getting sold, a lot of those were operating at partial capacity. So unfortunately, very, very, very few, very small percentage of landowners were able to actually take advantage of any increased pricing. And basically, you'd have had to had a job going on during all of this, so the timing would have had to been perfect for you to get any sort of additional bump in pricing. So that's kind of the shortish answer. And then I kind of dived in a little bit more, just talking about forest product markets right now. And markets in general, they're strong. There's demand for a lot of products. The big thing we're talking to a lot of landowners about is that whole tree chipping, those big biomass harvesting type of harvest, those have basically kind of dwindled down to very far and few between because of those whole tree chip, those biomass markets, which were those power plants. I don't know if anyone's been following kind of the news over the past couple of years, but there were basically these biomass power plants that were burning chips to create power. And long story short, legislation didn't really work in their favor, and a lot of those ended up closing and are kind of mothballed for right now. So we actually lost that market. So what that means moving forward is that there still is some whole tree chipping, but those are the very, very small kind of niche markets. Pine pulp, which is something to think about because both of these properties have a white pine component as well as a white pine pulp component. The white pine pulp situation over the past 10, 15 years has always been kind of up and down, and it's currently in a down scenario. We can still move a little bit of it, but it's very seasonal, most likely in the wintertime. But white pine saw logs, hardwood saw logs, all those markets are still strong. Firewood markets or cordwood markets, those are still very strong. So these are all kind of markets that would affect any sort of harvesting that is done on either of these properties. So I guess, and then kind of just in closing in some of my comments, we also want to kind of keep in consideration, we're starting to receive a lot more of these intense weather events. I don't know what anybody had for wind kind of earlier this week, depending on where you were, but I mean, there was some blowdown, mostly kind of isolated situations kind of to the south and to the east of where these properties are located. But just kind of as a collective, we always want to be aware of any major wind events, and these will include kind of like ice storms, like the 08 ice storm. You've got the Halloween storm we had, I think it was like a 2011-12 kind of in there, and just monitor for any sort of severe damage, which may require some sort of salvage harvesting. So those are things we want to kind of keep in the back of our minds. And then also, I know I kind of skimmed over in the beginning, but we have been kind of talking about this invasive plant situation, and both properties, invasive plants are very minimal. So I'm just going to cruise back to my notes here. and it was the Mitchell Street property. The landing for that property is actually on another town property, which has quite a bit of a invasive plant outbreak there. So we want to monitor that and keep that in consideration for if we do decide to harvest the Mitchell Street property. We just want to make sure we're not spreading those invasive plants into our property. So that's kind of a quick overview. Chris, let me know if I've missed anything, and then I'll open it up for questions, comments, and discussion.
I don't think you missed anything. Good report, Eric.
All right.
A couple of questions I have. We refer to it sometimes as the Mitchell Street property, but technically the access comes from Profile Drive or Profile Circle. And
Yep.
that right-of-way is so overgrown you can't really get in and out that way, as you recall. So when we come in, we enter the property through the Mitchell Street property that is owned by the town. And there's also an easement there for the Merrimack Village District to put in a couple of
Okay.
wells. So the question is, I think you coordinate with the Conservation Commission as well. And is there a likelihood that our harvest in whatever year, 2027, let's say, would be coordinated with the town's harvest on Mitchell Street?
It could be possible. I would have to revisit that with we'll say the Conservation Commission, whoever's in charge of that property, just to make sure the timing and everything's correct. But I do like to do that. I like to kind of bundle some properties and projects when it makes sense to do that.
Okay. The other thing we don't know is when the MVD might be doing any kind of construction work on their wells. It's not on our property, but the easement is only in one corner of our property, so it shouldn't impact us too much, but you just need to be aware of it. And for the audience, the scheduling is that when we want to do a harvest, we have to get permission from town meeting. So that's in March, and that means you need to prepare a warrant article sometime in December, January, to get it onto the agenda for the town meeting. So, and then the actual vote is in April. So there's a long lead time there when we do that kind of thing. And fortunately, it's only once every 25 years, so we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
So, Pat or Liz, do you have any questions, comments?
So you're considering a harvest
5 years from now?
in 2027?
Yes.
And you're looking at a warrant article in April of 2027 or a warrant article in 2026?
Probably in 2020. We would talk about it in 2026 and figure out.
In December of
if-
26 or?
And see, well, it would depend upon what the harvest or the yield might be at that time. So we don't know now whether we're gonna harvest in 26, 27, or 28. Decision to be determined later.
Where is the forest management plan? Is that something that's you have or that we should have? Because I don't have a copy of it as a new trustee.
I have copies of it, and I can email it to you.
Thank you.
It's a pretty big file, so we'll have to just keep an eye on your email so it doesn't automatically go to junk.
And my second question or third question is, what are we planning, or is there anything that we should be doing, or how often should we be checking for this invasive species, which your report indicates is starting to creep? 5 years from now, a lot of creeping can be done.
Eric, can you address that one?
So her mic was a little choppy, so I don't know if I can hear you, Chris, perfectly fine, but her mic was choppy.
Question is, when should we be looking at the invasive creep and doing immediate management of it?
If there's interest in doing the invasive plant control, I would recommend an early spring visit with all of us to revisit the site again, revisit the conditions, and then kind of basically look at the logistics and just basically have that discussion on site of what it would look like, what it's going to entail. I do like planning it in the early spring, because we'll be able to see the growth, but as well, with there being wellheads in the area, we will have to seek special permits through the Department of the Pesticide Board. And so we'll have to, yes, we'll have to do that if we want to decide to move forward within that same year. If not, we can talk, and that's, with the use of herbicide. We can also talk about some other types of controls, like mechanical controls. But basically, the short answer is, let's get together next spring on site to revisit the area and then talk about how to control it.
I think what I was also asking is, from your recent visit, do you think it's something we should start now or visit in 2 years?
You'll have to repeat that, Chris, because I can't hear.
I'm sorry. The question was, is that something we should be doing now, or should we wait another 2 years or so to revisit?
I would say to revisit now, because the longer we wait, the more these populations tend to grow and spread and become more of just a stronghold in general. It's easier to control a smaller, lighter population than a more kind of entrenched, heavier population.
Well, I guess the backup question on that is what the Conservation Commission might be doing to their property where the invasive species is more heavily evident. And if they're doing something, then we would coordinate on that.
Yes, yeah. So we'll have to extend. I would recommend extending an invitation to them, and then basically all parties involved kind of get together and say, hey, this is what the situation is. How can we work together to resolve it, and we can make our informed decisions from there.
Anything else, Pat?
No, not for him.
Okay. Bill, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, is there anything else for Eric? No
No,
action?
thank you, Eric.
No action to be taken today. Thank you, Eric, and we'll let you go.
All right, I appreciate everyone, and Chris, if anyone's got any questions, they can always email me, and we can address it that way too.
Okay, thank you.
So, all right, everybody, enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too,
Thanks, Eric.
Take care.
We'll see you. Thanks.
I don't know off the top of my
I
head.
don't know off the top of my head. I can find that out and let you know.
Yeah, I'm sure it's on the website. Okay, the next question on the agenda is just an announcement as much of anything, but if we have specific questions for Cambridge Trust for the November meeting, this is a good time to bring them up so that we can email them and have them do whatever research or presentation they need to do. We did talk about a couple of things last month on the fixed income parts of the scholarship fund, so we'll be transmitting that to them from last month. But if anybody has anything today, Bill, do you have anything?
Well, I think the last time they came, we talked about preferred, and they really didn't give us much of an answer on their position on preferred. And we might want to ask them that question. If they're, they're considering more preferreds, and if so,
Okay.
what's their action item?
We also wanted to talk about benchmarks.
Correct. They use some NASDAQ benchmark, and where we're income oriented. Not sure. It might be fine, Chris, but I'm just not. It wouldn't be a typical thing in my mind to use a NASDAQ measurement for considering an income portfolio. But again, I could be off base, or maybe I'm behind on something like that.
Okay, Pat, do you have anything?
A couple of things, but this is because I'm new to the board here, and I just got my first set of records to look at. And basically, because of my personal history, I was trying to figure out how you determine how much interest is in the library capital reserve funds, or how much interest is in, or how they invest in the school district funds. There's 5 different funds. How do we know which one? It seems to me like they're all combined. And I went through trying to figure out on the investments that they're doing here, which is the roof fund, and which is the pavement fund, and which is the, because we give a report on that every year, and I don't know how you figure that out, not from the reports they gave us. So that may be a
They're
question
in-
for you guys.
All that
as-
information is in the monthly MS9 that you get.
Oh,
Comes via email.
didn't get that either.
Oh, you should have, okay.
Okay,
Because I send it out every month. They send it to me and I distribute it
Okay.
to everybody.
Thank you.
Including the MVD and the school district, and Tom gets it for the town. So that lists each fund, and they're all invested in common. And then out of that investment, each individual fund gets a percent.
okay, that's what I was sort of wondering and thinking that's probably what it was a percentage. And then I had another question about
And the same
these-
thing applies to about 6 decimal places with the grave sites.
Yeah, I was going to ask where's the cemetery fund and how you deal with that, but yeah. And my next question was more not on these reports, but on these funds. When do you distribute the interest that I know you give to the library? Is it in January or is it July?
Neither one. The various boards or committees or whoever is likely to be the recipient makes a request. So, for example, we did 4 years in a row, roughly $100,000 for the 4 school libraries. They came to us and said, is this an approvable expense? We said yes. When the project was done, they sent us a bill and we paid it.
Okay, because I know the library, or at least it used to, but it's something I'll look into, because particularly in the library area, the will said that they get the interest yearly.
Yeah, and you'd have to talk to the library trustees about
Yeah.
that, but they've been letting it, there was a long time that we let it accumulate or paid out 90%, and we kept 10% for added growth. But they've been asking for it on a more scattered basis. I don't know what their
Okay. As I said,
particular motivations are, but
I'm just getting started, so
Yeah.
yeah, and there'll probably be questions next month, so it's a good
Okay.
thing there's no meeting in December.
So, anything else of
Okay.
general nature?
I'm good.
Okay. The next item listed here is an alternate trustee. We've never had one, but the question came up in the process of filling a vacant seat. And the law says, or the RSA says, that the trustees can nominate a person to be an alternate, and then the town council would approve that, but they don't do the screening process. We do. And Liz Petridis? I'm sorry? Petrides. I apologize. I should know better. Has expressed an interest in that, and I've explained to her that an alternate usually on other boards sits with the board, can enter discussions and everything else, but only votes if there's somebody either absent or if there's somebody who recuses themselves for whatever reasons they might want to do that. I do have, or did send out to everybody. My printer is down, so I didn't make copies of everything for this meeting. I don't usually. But Liz did send us an email with some of her background and so forth, and I find that to be pertinent to the type of stuff we do. If you want to say anything, Liz, that would be fine. Or if anybody, Bill or Pat, have questions, that would be fine as well.
Hi, I'm going to take my mask off here.
Hey, Liz, could you tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis, your current occupation, and,
Sure.
you know, any kind of background you have in investments?
Well, I work for a large...
You're not required necessarily to have a background in investments, but it would be interesting to know if you do have some experience in investing.
I do not have any background in investments, so I work today for an insurance company, and my team does demand forecasting and planning as well as supply planning. So I work directly with our finance partners. We work more with capacity and budgets. So we service about 3,000 call center agents across multiple countries. So my day to day is I have a little girl. She's just turned 1, so she keeps me up at night, and then I go to work. I work from home, doing that work for the insurance company day to day. So I have participated with the Conservation Commission now for, I want to say, almost 5 years. I've been on the Wildcat Falls subcommittee. I love to hike the trails here in Merrimack. I'm very active out on the trails. Have lived in town now for 9 years. I own a home here, and I plan to build a home here. So Merrimack is kind of where I intend to stay, and I care very much about the success of this town and want to make sure that if there's anything I can do to help, if I have any expertise whatsoever, I will certainly lend that. I have a lot to learn about what you guys do, to be honest, but I'm inquisitive, and I'm definitely interested.
Thank you. I will say that because of our unique makeup, if you will, we interact with the Conservation Commission, the MVD, the school board, the library, the town council, the finance department. We've got our relationships all over the place, so it's a very, to me, interesting set of duties to be aware of what's going on and interact with so many different bodies. Do you have anything, Pat?
I was just going to make a statement, but that as far as being new and learning the job, I'm right there with you, and I'm asking questions that, and just for that reason, because I know something about what the trustees, and I've dealt with the trustees of the trust funds as a library trustee, and I certainly know about the school because I'm the school district clerk. But I think having an alternate is a great training ground so that somebody doesn't have to be planked in and not have a clue of what was going on. I thought I had a clue, and I don't, but I'm asking questions, and I'm delighted to have a training ground for someone else.
Great.
Because things happen.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have one
I
other
would
question. Who's the chairman of the Conservation
I would
Commission?
definitely support having an alternate.
The question of the Conservation Commission, I'll be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. It's been a while since I've had to attend one of the meetings. So I was trying to search through my inbox, and I'll find it for you, but I don't remember offhand.
Okay. We haven't done this before, but I think the procedure would be for us to take a vote and nominate Liz, since she's interested and has some financial background. As you say, Bill, that's not necessarily required, but interest is required. So I would entertain a motion if somebody wants to go in that direction.
I would motion and nominate Liz for to be an alternate to the trustee of the trust funds organization, or whatever you want to say, committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. And any further discussion?
None from my.
Seeing none, we'll call the vote. I'm in favor. Pat?
In favor?
Bill?
Bill is in favor. Aye.
3-0-0. I will send correspondence to the town council to get onto their agenda for their actual appointment. process. So it may be sometime in November.
Okay.
But I would I'll keep you in the mailing list until it becomes official, and you'll get all the good deal stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Welcome.
Pat, our website says that the chairman of the Conservation Commission is Steve Perkins. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Okay, the next item is, under correspondence, we have a bill from Last Rest Cemetery. For those who have looked at it, I note that the bill is for work performed ending last year, December 31st, 2020. That bill always comes many months after the fact. It doesn't really impact us at all. But that's an example, Pat, of when things show up and there's no schedule for anything. We get the same thing with scholarships. We have half a dozen scholarships, and those come when the school sends the bill. Anyway, the amount requested. This is a background issue first. They sent us a bill that says Fund A, $10,883.95, and Fund B, $4,184.18. So you may say, what's Fund A and what's Fund B? 20 or 30 or 50 years ago, when we were under a different management plan, we had 4 funds, very cleverly named A, B, C, and D. So the Last Rest Cemetery still tracks them under that Fund A and Fund B, but for us now, they're all on the common funds and are invested accordingly. So the total amount is $15,068.13, and we need a motion to approve that amount. And any discussion people might have about perpetual care.
I'll go ahead and make the motion, because I've got the number right in front of me.
Okay?
I move that we pay the Last Rest bill $15,068.13.
Very good, thank you. Bill?
I will second that.
Any further discussion?
Chris, did you indicate, I thought you said you were gonna have a conversation about the increase in the amount of the per grave maintenance? Is that something that you've been able to do, or?
Yeah, actually, as it turns out, the original email with the explanation included that.
Okay.
And what happened is I opened the email and I said, oh, it's a bill. And I went right to the bill, didn't read all of the email before I very cleverly said, what's going on here? But the change is that the amount billed last year, which was equal to the amount the year before and so on and so forth, was based on a long-term contract with the landscape maintenance operation. And so they've signed a new contract. And as
Okay.
you might expect, prices have gone up.
Yep.
So I think we're still good on a per grave basis. But we do have to watch that, because if we had a given year when we didn't have much income, there was one point in 2007 or 8 when I think there were 3 grave sites we didn't pay them for. And they had to absorb the cost because the work had been done, and we can't pay money
That we don't have.
that we don't have.
Right.
So that's basically the explanation.
Okay.
And they expect that part of the billing that went into 2020 was a carryover of about, I don't know, $7,000. So the bill next year should be, or the total expenditure, which doesn't affect us directly, be about 39,000 instead of 45,000. So we should see a little bit of a drop next year. Now, in the past, we've also seen a fluctuation in the per grave cost because of rainfall or lack of rainfall. How fast does the grass grow? How many cuts do they have to make? So there's always a little bit of variation there.
Okay.
Okay, this is new kid on the block.
Sure.
If you just said the bill would be 35 or 40,000, why is it only 15?
Because that's the total landscaping expense. We only have a couple hundred graves, they have 800.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, sir.
You'd have to go out and count them yourself. Any other comments or questions?
I'm good.
Calling for a vote. Bill's in favor? Pat?
In favor?
And I'm in favor, so 3-0-0. Next item is the Bear Christensen Fund. At last night's town council meeting, there was a presentation made by yours truly to turn over this fund, which has been privately held for the last 30 years or so, and turn it over to the town, which would go to the trustees of trust funds. That was part of the original document that was drafted in 1990. And the town council voted in favor of that. And there is a set aside, the total fund is about $27,000, giving whatever the market value happens to be on a given day. But that's $3,000 of that would go into the common income fund, and the rest would go into principal for additional investment. The point is that if you put everything into principal initially, then the first year of income might be 2 or 3%, and on a $10,000 fund or $20,000 fund, whatever it happens to be, the example I used was you've barely got enough money to buy a pocket comb. So we wanted to start that off so that there's an expendable portion of the fund that can be used initially to continue at least the funding of Camp Natticook scholarships that we've been covering for many, many years. So I will, that's really a town council vote. We don't need to vote on anything other than to say we're receiving the money, and I will coordinate with Cambridge Trust to add it to the account, similar to what we did with the Barry Quimby Fund for the library a few months ago.
Chris, I was just curious what in the past, what has been the contributions towards those camp scholarships on an annual basis? Is that
Generally,
something
2-week
that-
scholarship, and it depended on whatever the price of the scholarship was that given year.
Okay.
The fund was it was just in one mutual fund. So it was managed on a total return basis. And if we made $600 that year, then we had that available. If we didn't spend it for a couple of scholarships, and it just continued to sit in the fund.
Okay.
And we also made, because it was not a 501c3, we also made some payments of taxes to the IRS, $29 one year. Because we basically, any growth, we gave away.
We were talking before about how money gets spent out of here, and it's based normally on requests for funding. And in this case, how would you envision that working going forward? Is that something that
Matt or somebody
Matt
else
would-
involved in youth programs would make a request.
Okay. Makes sense.
Matt has been, or whoever, Sherry, whoever's been P&R director, has sent a letter to us every year saying we'd like to spend money to do this,
Gotcha. Okay.
and whatever it happens to be. There was a time frame when we did swimming lessons. There was a time frame when we were buying stuff for the waterfront. It depended, but we focused on the scholarships because buying equipment for the waterfront seemed like, well, that's something that the town budget ought to cover anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm sure in the future, somebody may come up with something else creative, and
Yep.
We hope there will be enough money to cover it, and I would expect that there will be additional contributions over the years.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I mean, I just think it's a great legacy, and you know what a thoughtful thing to do for for the town that you and Lynn did. So,
Well,
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Really wasn't our money. I mean, some of it, we started the fund, but there were others in town and at my office and Lynn's office who contributed at the time of Bear's death. And so it's not really something that we did by ourselves.
Well, it has to be all, the conceptual thought process and all that. So it's a great thing.
Thank you. Anybody else on that? Okay. Next meetings, November 19th, and that's the one where we will invite Cambridge Trust.
I am good for that personally.
Okay.
Speaking by myself.
And we do not have a December meeting scheduled. We never do. Although I suppose we could have one if we needed it for some reason. And then the next meeting after that would be January 21st, probably. Generally, for information purposes, we're the third Friday of the month, but we adjust it sometimes to a later date. In particular, if the Friday is on the 15th, we don't always have the bank statements by that date. So we try to have it after we've had the bank statements in hand for a day or two, so people can look at them and we can make adjustments if necessary, and be fairly timely. Are those meeting dates okay with everybody? You said okay, Bill? January,
They're okay
are you in town, Bill?
Yeah, they're fine. I'm in town.
Okay. Pat, you're okay with those dates? Okay. And Liz, as far as you know, you're good? Okay. Okay, anything else that might properly come before the Board of Trustees?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Yeah, that didn't say, 'cause I wanted
And the time is 9:45.